All right, so now, what I want to do first, we finna start this bad boy off in Michael Newton's book, PhD. Michael Newton, PhD. He created a book called Journey of Souls, Case Studies of Life Between Lives. Let me say it again. Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, Newton, PhD. Case studies of life between lives. So what he done, what this guy did, he was a hypnotist, and as being a hypnotist, trying to get people over traumatic events that they didn't realize why they had so much pent up anger, aggression, why they had so much pent up depression, why they had aches that they went to the doctor and the doctor said that they was fine with all of these things that was going on in Michael Newton's career. He was able to help these people through these things through hypnotizing them. But what he stumbled across, and I believe he was an atheist in the beginning, but what he stumbled across was when he was digging deep down in people's psyche, they start talking about a life that they lived before they came on earth. Let me say it again. While he was going through this hypnotism, this therapy he got going on, he started to hear stories that his clients had about living in the spirit realm before they came to earth. And it was mind boggling. And he took 29 case studies from his thousands upon thousands of interviews, and he wrote them in a book. And he wrote them down in interview form as he was doing the interview. So what we're going to do, we're going to read one of the case studies about souls. When a soul leaves the body, what this client said happened when his soul actually left his body. So we're going to go to page 91, and we're going to read about 5 pages, right? Now, this is just question and answer form. This is interview form. So now, I know we're thinking like, this is a Bible lesson, right? This is a Bible lesson. We're supposed to be talking about Bible here. This ain't got nothing. Yes, we're definitely going to get to the Bible. But first, we have to understand the background, because a lot of people don't know what the Bible actually is. So now, I'm going to start. This is case 16 on page 91. It says Dr. N, and then S is subject. So I'm just going to say doctor and subject. Okay. This is after the spirit leaves his body. It connects to its spirit guide. Oh, that's not biblical. But let's keep going. Once you are leaving the staging area and have arrived in the spiritual space where you belong, what do you do then? So this is the doctor asking someone that was being hypnotized, right? About one of his past lives. He said, okay, once you go, so believe it or not, the spiritual world, according to these events, is set up just like Earth. The things that you do on earth is pretty much what you do in the spiritual world, just to a higher degree. So just like we got a staging area and etc. when we're getting ready to go on a trip, the spirit world has a staging area when you get ready to go on a trip there. But let's keep going on. And I know it sounds far-fetched, sound wow, way, but let's just listen. Subject: I go to school with my friends. Doctor: you mean you are in some kind of spiritual classroom? Subject: yes, where we study. Doctor: I want you to take me through this school from the time of your arrival so I can appreciate what is happening to you. Start by telling me what you see from the outside. Subject: with no hesitation. I see a perfectly square Greek temple with large sculptured columns. Very beautiful. I recognize it because this is where I return after each cycle life. First thing the subject said, reincarnation is real. First thing the subject said, reincarnation is real. Okay? He says that he recognized where he was at because each life cycle he returns to the same place. Now, this is the doctor. What is a classical Greek temple doing in the spirit world? Subject shrugs. I don't know why it appears to me that way, except it seems natural since my lives in Greece. Doctor. All right, let's continue. Does anyone come to meet you? Subject. Subject smiles broadly. My teacher, Carla. Doctor. And how does she appear to you? Subject. Confidently. I see her coming out of the entrance of the temple towards me as a goddess, tall, wearing long flowing robes. One shoulder is bare. Her hair is piled up and fastened with a gold clasp. She reaches out to me. Doctor, look down at yourself. Are you dressed in the same garments? Subject, we all seem to be dressed the same. We shimmer with light and we can change. Carla knows I like the way she looks. Doctor, where are the others? Subject, Carla has taken me inside my temple school. I see a large library. Small gatherings of people are speaking in quiet tones at tables. It is sedate, warm, a secure feeling which is so familiar to me. Doctor, do all these people appear as adult men and women? Subject, yes, but there are more women in my group. Doctor, why? Subject, because that's the valence, VALENCE, they are most comfortable with right now. Now, this is note. The word valence used by this subject to indicate gender preference is an odd choice, yet it does fit. Valence in chemistry are positive or negative properties, which, when combined with other elements, give proportions. Souls in groups may be inclined toward male and females or personages or mix or besides, anyway, you get to choose what you want to look like, in other words. Doctor, okay, what do you do next? Subject, Carla leads me to the nearest table, and my friends immediately greet me. Oh, it's so good to be back. Doctor, why are these particular people here with you in this temple? Subject, because we are all in the same study group. I can't tell you how happy I am to be with them once more. Subjects become distracted with this scene, and it takes me a minute to get her started again. Doctor, tell me how many people are in the library with you. Subject, pause while mentally counting. About 20. Doctor, are all 20 very close friends of yours? Subject, we are all close. I've known them for ages, but 5 are my dearest friends. Doctor, are every one of the 20 people at about the same level of learning? Now, I'm going to read 2 more pages of this. All right. Subject, almost. Some are a little further along than the rest. Doctor, where would you place yourself in the group as far as knowledge? Subject, around the middle. Doctor, as to learning lessons, what are your relation to your 5 closest friends? Subject, oh, we're about the same. We work together a lot. Doctor, what do you call them? Subject, chuckles. We have pet names for each other. Doctor, why do you have nicknames? Subject, to define our essence. We see each other as representing earth things. Doctor, what is your pet name? Subject, Thistle. Doctor, and this represents some personal attribute? Subject, Pause. I am known for sharp reactions to new situations in my rotations, life cycles. So, once again, this is a doctor who has a subject under hypnotism, right? Hypnotizes a servant, and I mean servant, a subject, and that subject has went into one of her previous lives as a soul when she left her body and went to the spiritual realm. So a person can ask you right now, what happens when we die? And people say, well, we don't know. Well, it's a lot of documented evidence by these hypnotists, thousands upon thousands of reports actually to what happened to the soul when an individual dies. So we can definitely give a clear testimony of it. Now it's up to the people if they believe it or not, but we definitely can give a clear testimony, and the testimony is a little different than what the Bible is presenting, and we're going to find why. And when we're done with this, as the lesson progresses, right? Doctor, what is the entity you feel closest to called and why? Subject, soft laughter, spray. He goes flat out of his rotations, dispensing his energy so rapidly it splashes in all directions, just like the water he loves so much on earth. Doctor, your family sounds very distinctive. Now, would you explain to me what you and your friends actually do in this library setting? Subject, I go to my table and we all look at the books. Doctor, books? What sort of books? Subject, the life books. Sound familiar? Sound familiar, people? Subject, the life books. Doctor, describe them as best as you can for me. Subject, they are picture books, thick white edges, 2 or 3 inches thick, quite large. Doctor, open one of the life books for me and explain what you and your friends at the table see. Subject, pause while the subject's hand come together and move apart as though she was opening the book. There is no writing. Everything we see is in live pictures. Doctor, action pictures? Different than photographs? Subjects, yes, they are multidimensional. They move, shift from a center of crystal, while changes with which changes with reflected lights. Subject, doctor, so the picture are not flat, the moving light waves have depth? Subjects, that's right. They are alive. Doctor, tell me how you and your friends use the books. Subject, well, at first it always. Sorry, hold on. Let me hold on one second. Subject, well, at first it's always out of focus when the book is open. Then we think of what we want. The crystal turns from dark to light and gets into alignment. Then we see in miniature our past lives and the alternatives. Doctor, how is time treated in these books? Subject, by frames, pages. Time is condensed by the life books. Doctor, I don't want to dwell on your past right now, but look at the book and just tell me the first thing you see. Subject, a lack of self discipline in my life, because this is what is on my mind. I see myself dying young in a lover's quarrel. My ending was useless. Doctor, do you see a future? Do you see future lives in the life book? Subject, we can look at future possibilities in small bites only, in the form of lessons. Mostly these options come later with the help of others. These books are intended to emphasize our past acts. Doctor, would you give me your impression of the intent behind this library atmosphere with your cluster group? Subject, oh, we all help one another go over our mistakes during this cycle. Our teacher is in and out, and we do a lot of studying together and discuss the value of our choices. Now, I got one more page, and then we can move on. Doctor, are there other rooms where people study in the building? Subject, no, this is for our group. There are different buildings where various groups study near us. Doctor, are the groups of people who study in the buildings more or less advanced than those in your group? Subject: both. Doctor: are you allowed to visit these other buildings where souls study? Subject: long pause. There is one which we go to regularly. Doctor: which one? Subject: a place for the newer ones. We help them when their teacher is gone. It's nice to be needed. Doctor: help them how? Subject laughs. With their homework. Doctor: but don't the teacher guides have that responsibility? Subject: where you see the teachers are so much further along in development. This group appreciates our assistance because we relate to them easily. Doctor: oh, so you do a little student teaching with this group. Subject: yes, but we don't do it anywhere else. Doctor: why not? Why couldn't more advanced groups come to your library to assist you once in a while? Subject: they don't because we are further along than the newer ones, and we don't infringe on them either. If I want to connect with someone, I do it outside the study center. Doctor: can you wonder about anywhere as long as you don't bother other souls in the study area? Subject responds with evasiveness. I like to stay around the vicinity of my temple, but I can reach out to anyone. Doctor: I get the impression that your soul is restricted to this spiritual space, even though you can mentally reach out further. Subject: I don't feel restricted. We have plenty of room to go about, but I am not attracted to everyone. All right, so that's it right there. So now, this is just one case study of the 29 in this book. And you can clearly see from this lady's experience and the way that Mr. Michael Newton wrote down her experience, there's a lot going on in the spiritual world between incarnations. Now, I know a lot of people might not believe on reincarnation, but there's too much evidence from these near-death experiences and these individuals that go under hypnotism and all these hypnotists writing these books and etc. It's too much evidence, and then we can find it. We find a lot of shadows of it in the Bible, but as well as some of the ancient Israelite belief and Near Eastern beliefs also. But it's too much evidence that reincarnation exists. The problem is why don't we remember our past lives? And there's a reason why we wouldn't remember it. But what today's lesson is going to show us how the Bible itself came about according to how history is laid out. And then we can begin to see the point of Scripture. Because right now, what's going on in these testimonies is similar to the Bible, but not exact. It's similar. Like in these testimonies, a lot of people are not met by Christ, but people are met by their what they call soul group. Supposedly, you was created with a group, and you and your group incarnate in every life together. And y'all switch the roles and the identity that you want to do because it's all about gathering for the better. For when you cross over, you get to get a promotion, as in become a spirit guide, become a teacher, and etc. And you can help all other souls because the end result is supposed to be every soul created by the source, by the Most High, by the Father, is supposed to be on an elevated level. Every soul is supposed to be on quote unquote crisis level when it's said and done. That's the final goal, for everyone to be on the same spiritual high frequency level. So this is what the coronations coming back to earth is doing. You're supposed to increase in frequency every trip. Every trip you learn more and more about love, kindness, peace, joy, happiness. You're supposed to learn that every trip. But some people get caught up in the world loving the world, and their cycles last longer because the end goal is for everyone to be on that level. So now, okay. So what we're going to listen to now, we're going to listen to two individuals break down what the Bible, how the Bible is to be viewed from an ancient Eastern mindset, as well as a guy named Emanuel Swedenborg. Now, if you don't know who Emanuel Swedenborg is, supposedly he's a guy who had almost like a near-death experience for 20 years. He was this is his testimony now. Once again, it's up to you to believe it or not, but supposedly he was visited by angels and etc. for like 20 years. And he wrote down the things that he was taught by the angels and the places that he went to in the spiritual world. He wrote it down and etc. in his book. It's up to in his book, sorry, with an S. It's up to you guys to believe it or not. I'm just saying the material is here. It's here for us to read and learn different perspectives from, but it's up to you. I'm not going to push that on you. I just say this is some of the information that I came across, and it seems to be a little bit on point, especially when you mix it with some of the ancient Near Eastern traditions and the information that they left. And when he said that he spoke to angels about the Bible, you will see what he said that they told him about what we have called these holy scriptures. But first, we're going to listen to Brother Hans, right? This is Hans Will. What's his last name? Hold on. What's your Hans Wilhelm? Hans HANSWILHELM. Now, this is the guy. He studied a lot of the ancient Near Eastern traditions and literature and cultures and etc. So now, this is what he says. He says, "Is the Bible God's word?" Now, we finna listen to just his breakdown from his perspective. All right. And then we're going to continue on. I'm going to play 109 through 155. So let's see if I can get it out loud. One sec.
And many more horrors. But what is the Bible? The Bible is nothing but a selection of countless ancient scriptures and stories into which many translators and scribes have interpreted their own consciousness in numerous passages, century after century. For instance, the story of Noah is nothing more than a retelling of the much older legend of Utnapishtim from the ancient epic of Gilgamesh. The Bible came about in the 4th century, when a theologian named Jerome was asked by the Pope to compile all existing gospel texts and translate them into one book into the Latin language. This book is also called the Vulgate Bible, which the Catholic Church considers to be free of errors and binding right up until today.
All right. So that's his perspective of what the Bible is. A lot of ancient information written by people from their perspective and pretty much giving the foundation or giving the culture behind it or giving characters behind it. So that's his perspective of learning and studying Near East traditions and etc. All right. So now we're going to listen to Emmanuel Swedenborg, the guy who said that he went over for over 20 years speaking to angels and etc. And one of the good things about it, or interesting things about it, it could be myth, but it said he is said to a fire was going on in his days, and he was able to tell the people that this supposed fire was actually happening And it was like miles and miles and miles away. So we're talking about the 1800s. And it comes to find out that the fire actually indeed was happening at the time that he said it was happening. He said angels was the one who told him that. And then another interesting thing was he was able to tell his workers and etc. the exact day that he was going to die at the exact time, to down to the pretty much to the T. So he told them the exact day and time, and he died that exact day and time. So to me, that's very interesting. And one of the last things he did, he saw a little girl, and a little girl asked him, because they thought he was crazy in his days, if he talked to angels and he see angels, and etc. He been seeing them so long. Show her so she can see an angel. She want to see an angel herself. So prove to her that what he said is what he said is true. And he agreed to do it. And it went down to, I think it was like maybe a week or two before he died. And he promised her that he was going to show her an angel. So one night, it could have been day or night, I can't remember, but she came to his room, and he walked her in a room, and he walked her into a door, and they looked in the room, and standing in the room was a mirror, and she saw her own reflection, her own image, and he said, "That's what an angel looks like." And he died like I think a week or two later. So there's just a little background of him. All right, so we're gonna listen to him from 0 to 3 minutes, and then I will open it up and see if anybody want to say anything before we get into this literature. So
Humanity has a mixed relationship with the Bible, to say the least. Some absolutely love it, some can't stand it, and you've probably got a pretty big spectrum in the people that you know, and maybe even within your own experiences of the text. And the text seems to have this totally split personality. Jesus says, love your enemies, but Joshua says, pursue your enemies, attack them from the rear, don't let them reach their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. It's a hard thing to love. The only way to resolve the tension is through understanding the language of divine allegory or parable that the Bible is actually written in, called correspondences. Once we look through that lens, we can see that the Bible is a document about spiritual life, not physical life. Taking the Bible literally actually breaks and fractures the true message. But if you understand the Bible through correspondences, then the different passages are part of a unified whole. There are three kinds of damaging quandaries that come from taking the Bible literally. First, how can we follow the commandment to love God when God sometimes seems so frightening and at times immoral in the Bible? Taking the Bible literally leads to fear of or anger toward God rather than connection with God. But understanding the Bible as sacred allegory teaches us about how our own view of God fluctuates depending on our state of mind. It's a symbolic story about our personal spiritual journey, with all its ups and downs. Second, what are we supposed to do with Jesus' teachings about loving our neighbor, including our enemies, when the Bible seems to condone war, slavery, vengeance, and judgment? Taking the Bible literally has been used to justify all sorts of terrible attitudes and actions, but understanding the Bible as a correspondential allegory about our inner spiritual journey paints a whole different picture. People, locations, and events in the Bible all represent qualities and processes within our own hearts and minds. Enemies represent harmful thoughts and feelings, while chosen people represent the parts in us that God can speak to and lead. Third, do we have to ignore scientific research and people's personal spiritual experiences if they seem to conflict with the Bible's text? Taking the Bible literally leads to a war between science and religion and a rejection of personal experiences. But understanding the Bible as a sacred allegory unites God's word with God's physical creation and unites God's written message with the deep personal messages from God that come to people during visions and near-death experiences. The Bible even acknowledges this use of symbolism. These things I have spoken to you in figurative language, but the time is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figurative language. Correspondences are the key to understanding that figurative language so that it becomes direct and helpful. We've got a whole suite of resources on the concept.
All right. So now, and that's coming from Swedenborg, one of his people that study his work and etc. How he pretty much breaks down the Bible, studying under Swedenborg's literature. Now, a lot of people could say yay or nay, but I'm going to prove that what he just stated right there, that's what the ancient church actually believed, and I'm going to prove what he just stated was what the ancient church believed, which is the Bible has a lot of symbolism in it. The problem is we have lost that method of understanding the Bible and turned it over into hyper literalism. So now we even say that the Bible is spiritual, but we take a lot of the spiritual application out of the Bible. And we even have some people say you're spiritualizing the Bible too much, which is a ridiculous thing to say. A spiritual book created by a spiritual spirit. I mean, by a spirit. I said spiritual spirit, but created by a spirit. But I'm going to show, I'm going to prove as time progresses that that's what the some of the first Christians thought about the Bible as well. So before I start and finally finna go into the literature on how the Bible was composed, we had to go through this information first to let it be understood that it's not meant to take you away from the Lord. It's meant to take you to the Lord. So when a lot of people come with this information, this actually factual information, you would know how to actually rebuttal, as well as you will actually understand yourself personally what you should and should not be getting from the Bible. So before I continue on, does anybody got anything they want to say? Am I still picking up?
Yeah, you picking up.
Okay. All right. Well, so we got the backstory. We got that out the way. Okay. So now let's go and find out some of this ancient information dealing with the scriptures. We have in Philo, right? In fact, let me put this down. Uh, and just for a text for you guys to read, you guys already gonna know this text, but just in case, read Romans, and I'm gonna read it out loud. Romans 15 and 4. It says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures, might have hope." Now, I know this is an isolated verse, but that isolated verse is the truth. The things written aforetime was for learning, and through understanding, through reading those stories, you're supposed to gather patience and hope through reading those stories. But now, we're going to go to not Philo's, Josephus. Let me see if I can get this on the screen. Let's see here. See if I can get this source on the screen real fast. Okay, I got it right here. Okay. We're going to go to, my first thing, we're going to go to Flavius Josephus against Apion. This is, if you got the hard copy, this is going to be found on page 939. This against Apion. Let's read what this guy's beef was with the Jews. I'm going to start at 178. I'm going to read section 178 and 179. It says, "Then replied Aristotle, For this cause, it will be the best way to imitate the rule of the rhetoricians, which requires us to first give an account of the man and of what nation he was, that so we may not contradict our master's direction. Then said Hyperchides. Hyperchides. These Greeks have crazy names. Go on, if it so pleases thee. This man then answered Aristotle, was by birth a Jew, and came from Celesyria. These Jews, and let me read this. Let me underline it. These Jews are derived from the Indian philosophers. They are named by the Indians Ptolemy, and by the Syrians Judea, and took their name from the country they inhabit, which is called Judea. But for the name of their city, it is a very awkward one, for they call it Jerusalem. So, what's going on? They're having Apion is having a conversation, and Joseph is trying to dispute him. So Apion actually goes to a quote from Aristotle, and saying that Aristotle met a Jew, and he discoursed with the Jew. Aristotle, one of those Greek philosophers, said he had a discourse with a Jew. And during the discourse, during the writing of Aristotle, Aristotle tried to give the background of the Jews. And he said that the Jews are actually derived from Indian philosophers. Let me say it again. He said the Jews, the nation of the Jews, was actually derived from the Indian philosophers. Now that sounds ridiculous to us in the 21st century. How ridiculous does it sound? Come on now, we know the Jews didn't come from Indian philosophy, and then they came together and started calling themselves Jews, and they made a whole story up about themselves. No, we know that that's not true. But what I decided to do, I decided to go into some ancient Indian philosophy to see why such a claim could be made about the Jews. So one thing we got, starting with the Jews, we have Torah. Torah, Moses writing, the first 5 books. He the one who introduced the chosen, the Israelites, and etc. So let's see why this guy would make such a claim that the Jews actually derived from Indian philosophers. Where would he get this information from? Well, let's travel over to India and let's look at some of their mythology. Let's look at some of their mythos and see what we came up with. So this is from the worldhistory.org. Sarah Vati, Sarasvati, a Sarah Vati. Now I'm just going to read a little bit of it. It says, in Hindu mythology, Sarawati is the wife of the great god Brahma. Okay, first of all, we have that there's a lady goddess that encompasses the name Sarah, and her husband encompasses the name Brahma. So we got a Sarawati and a Brahma. Okay, let's keep reading. However, according to some traditions, she was first the wife of Vishnu. The latter, though, already had his hands full with 2 other wives, and so gave Sarawati to Brahma. Although one of the most important Hindu gods, Brahma, is rarely actively worshipped. In mythology, this is explained as the result of a curse from Sarawati. The curse was actually brought about through a misunderstanding. Listen to the misunderstanding. One day, when awaiting his wife to begin an important religious ceremony, and so unable to start the ritual punctually, Brahma asked the gods advice. They responded by creating a new wife for him, Gayatri, so that the ceremony could go ahead at the precise time. However, when Sarawati eventually turned up, she was not pleased to see her husband with another woman, and so cursed Brahma, never to be worshipped by humanity, even if he is worshipped today in parts of Southeast Asia. So what we have here, we got Sarawati and Brahma, and there was supposed to be a type of religious ceremony that Sarawati wasn't able to do, making them not be able to perform it on time. So another wife was given to Brahma instead. Sounds familiar? Now this is Indian tradition. All right. So now this is from the HinduSaveSalve.com. Lord Brahma. So once again, this is mythology. So they have more than one story, right? So let me read about Brahma. Brahma is believed to have come from Lord Vishnu. Moreover, Brahma was born out of the belly of Lord Vishnu. In fact, according to Puranas, it means that Brahma comes from Vishnu. In several Lord Vishnu's images, Vishnu is shown to be reclining on serpent Adishisha. Adishisha. A lotus is shown to be emerging from his belly button on which Brahma is sitting. All right, so we got Brahma's father is reclining on a serpent, right? So you might say, oh, well, that ain't got nothing to do with nothing. That ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Let's keep reading. Sarawati. According to the descriptions found in the Puranas, Lord Brahma divided his body into two parts. Sound familiar? The female part took the form of Sarawati. Sound familiar? As Sarawati emerged from Brahma's body, logically, she is the daughter of Brahma. However, Brahma was fascinated by her beauty and wanted to marry her. Sarawati got irritated from the attention of Brahma and tried to escape from him, but Brahma followed Sarawati wherever she went. So now we got Sarawati being so beautiful that her father wanted to wed her. Concentrate on how beautiful she was. It is said that she was so beautiful, right? So that's another characteristic of the Sarawati. Now, this will be the last one that I'm gonna say about these individuals, and I'm gonna move on. Now, once again, well, let me before I even say what I'm gonna say, let me read it. This is from HinduFocus.wordpress.com 2009. It says in Hindu mythology, Sarasvati is Brahma's sister. So this is another scholar that's taking it, or another person that understands the mythology, and he's taking it from another mytho, because it's more than one mytho about these guys over there in that world. It says it's Abraham's sister. The Bible gives two stories of Abraham. In this first version, Abraham told Pharaoh that he was lying when he introduced Sarah as his sister. In the second version, he told the king of Gerar that Sarah was really his sister. However, when the king scolded him for lying, Abraham said that Sarah was in reality both his wife and his sister. And yet, indeed, she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. Genesis 20 and 12. But the anomalies don't end here. In India, a tributary of the river Saravati is Gadgar. Now, a tributary of the river Saravati is Gadgar. Another tributary of the same river is Hakra. According to Jewish traditions, Hagar was Sarah's maidservant. The Muslims say she was an Egyptian princess. Notice the similarities of Gagar, Hakrar, and Hagar. If you combine Hakrar and Gagar, you got Hagar. That's pretty much what they're saying. The Bible also states that Ishmael, son of Hagar, and his descendants lived in India. Ishmael breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his kin. They dwelt from Havilah, India, by Shur, which is close to Egypt, all the way to Ashur, Genesis 25:17 through 18. It is an interesting fact that the names of Isaac and Ishmael are derived from Sanskrit. Hebrew, Ishak, equals Sanskrit, Ishaku, equals friend of Shiva. Shiva. Hebrew, Ishmael, equals Sanskrit, Ishmahal, equals great Shiva. So what they're saying is these Hebrew names have Indian roots, and the Indian roots is making these individuals do with the god or the goddess of the Indians. So you got a in the Indian tradition, you got a Braham or Brahm or Brahma, you got a Sarawati, you got a Agar, Agar, Hagar, and a Hakra. You got a, let me see here, Ishaku and a Ishmahal. All of these in the Indian mythologies. So when Apion is looking at this stuff, he's saying that your Moses stole it, or your Moses borrowed, or your Moses remixed it, because the things that you're seeing in Torah is clearly reflected in India. So now, let's go to another ancient Mesopotamia legend. Now,
Hey,
if
yo,
you guys
Alvin.
have not, I'll say it again.
Hey, Alvin. I was just going to say, man, my jaw is on the ground right now. On this dragon. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go into it a little bit more, because it's a lot with the what the Bible was supposed to be compared to how we kind of view it today, and we're trying to get behind it. It's a reason why the near death, when these people are having these near death experiences, a lot of the things that they're seeing and hearing and being shown is not found in our Bible, and I'm trying to find out why. But now it's making more sense now. All right, so now we go to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Older Samaritan, Mesopotamia, older than Torah. Let's go to just some of the comparison. I ask everybody to read on their own. Read on your own. But this is just some of the comparisons of Genesis, the flood story, and the Epic of Gilgamesh. Extent of the flood, global. Genesis global, Gilgamesh global. Cause. In Genesis, man's wickedness. In Gilgamesh, man's sins. Intended for whom? In Genesis, all mankind, except the ones that survived. In Gilgamesh, one city and all mankind, except who survived. Sender in Genesis was Yahweh. Sender in Gilgamesh was assembly of gods. Name of hero in Genesis, Noah. Name of hero in Gilgamesh, Uthmanism or Umnaptism. I can't pronounce that's ridiculous. But hero's character, righteous in Noah's. His character. His character was righteous in Genesis, and in the Epic of Gilgamesh, his character was righteous. The means of announcement, direct from God in Genesis, and Epic of Gilgamesh in a dream. Ordered to build a boat in Genesis and Epic of Gilgamesh, both yes. Did the hero complain? They said yes in Genesis and yes in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Height of boat, several stories in Genesis, several stories in Gilgamesh. In Genesis it says 3, in Gilgamesh it says 6. Compartments inside, they both say many. Doors, they both say 1. Windows, at least 1 for both of them. Outside coating, they both used pitch. Shape of boat. Genesis says rectangular and Gilgamesh says square. But we also have some other information from some sources that says that Noah's boat was actually in a pyramid. In some instances, Noah's boat was actually in a square also, or in a cube. So it depends on the perspective right there. It says human passengers in Genesis, family members only, with the wives of the sons, and Epic of Gilgamesh, family and a few others. Other passengers in Genesis, all species of animals. In Epic of Gilgamesh, all species of animals. Means of flood in Genesis, groundwater and heavy rain. Heavy rain in Epic of Gilgamesh. Duration of flood. The Bible, long, 40 days and nights plus. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, short, 6 days and nights. And we know 40 because Israel, they love the number 40. It's very symbolic to them. Test to find land. In Genesis, release of birds. In Epic of Gilgamesh, release of birds. Type of birds. In Genesis, raven and 3 doves. In Epic of Gilgamesh, dove, swallow, and a raven. Ark landing spot. Genesis, mountain. Mount Ararat. What's that? Ararat. Ararat. In Epic of Gilgamesh, mountain. Mount Nisar. Sacrifice after the flood. Genesis, yes, by Noah. Epic of Gilgamesh, yes, by Uthmanism, whatever that guy's name is. Blessed after the flood, yes, by in Genesis, and yes, in Epic of Gilgamesh. So, and then as you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, you realize that he was actually looking for a tree of life or a fruit of life. And toward the end, the fruit of life got stolen from him by a serpent. So we can clearly see similarities of what the Torah was bringing out in story form, compared to other ancient mythos, what they brought out in story form. And it would make perfect sense because, as Philo stated, Moses was in the king's court learning information from everyone who came into the king's court. Every wise sage that came into the king's court, Moses was learning from them. So it would make perfect sense for Moses to take the information he gained from them and remix the story to fit his people and his culture, because through mythos, that's how the ancient world developed cultures and had a society where a people based on their mythos, the stories that they had about their ancestors and etc. So it would make perfect sense that Moses would do the same thing. So if Moses is borrowing from them, and you see the similarities, is Moses saying take these things literal or learn from the stories? Is learning from what was written aforetime, is it for learning and to teach patience and etc., or was it for them to take hyper literal? Let's keep going on. Let's keep going on. Let's see if we can find out. Let's see here. Did I not copy it? Nope, I did not. We got, if we look up, if you guys get some free time, look up the instructions of Amen Nemote. Amenemope. Amenemope. You know that's an Egyptian name. Look up the instructions of him and compare it to Solomon's Proverbs. Look up the Proverbs of Solomon and compare it to the instructions of Amenemope, and look at how close some of the sayings are, almost exact. Another Egyptian root found throughout the Bible. So now, this is all Old Testament stuff. We finna go to the New Testament now. But y'all remember what I said earlier? I'm going to prove that the ancient Christians viewed the Bible a little different, well, a lot different than we do today. We're going to go to Eusebius, ecclesiastical, I can't say it, ecclesiastical church history, book 2. I'm going to read chapters 15 through 17. I know it sounds a lot, but it's only like two verses in each chapter, or two sections. So let's just read a little bit. This is chapter 15, the gospel according to Mark. This is what it says about Mark's gospel. And thus, when the divine word had made its home among them, the power of Simon was quenched and immediately destroyed, together with the man himself. And so greatly did the splendor of piety illumine the minds of Peter's hearers, that they were not satisfied with hearing once only, and were not content with the unwritten teaching of the divine gospel. So what is he saying? According to Eusebius, the gospel was in oral form first, handed down orally, oral traditions first. All right, but the people were not satisfied with that. Let's keep going. It says, but with all sorts of entreaties, they besought Mark, a follower of Peter, and the one whose gospel is extant, that he would leave them a written monument of the doctrine which had been orally communicated to them. Nor did they cease until they had prevailed with the man, and had thus become the occasion of the written gospel, which bears the name of Mark. And they say that Peter, when he had learned through a revelation of the Spirit of that which had been done, was pleased with the zeal of the men, and that the work obtained the sanction of his authority for the purpose of being used in the churches. Clement in the 8th book, well, I'm gonna skip that. Chapter 16. Mark first proclaimed Christianity to the inhabitants of Egypt. So this is for everybody who's like, Christianity started in the America and slavery and all that other crap that people say and misuse, not using historical information. Christianity was in Africa before there was a slave ship. Before, and they even remixed some of those records. But before all of that happened, Christianity was in Africa. This is the 1st century. So we can stop all of the white man created this stuff. Let's stop that. But now, and it says, and they say that this mark was the first that was sent to Egypt. Here's a nice little tidbit. Philo was in Alexandria, Egypt. Another little tidbit. The first and second book of Adam, the first book of Adam and Eve was also found in Egypt. That's nice little tidbits. And that he proclaimed the gospel. Oh, my bad. Also, the book of Enoch was also found in Egypt and is in Ethiopia and stuff also. But now, and he proclaimed the gospel which he had written and first established church. Let me read it again. My bad. That he proclaimed the gospel which he had written and first established churches in Alexandria. According to Eusebius, the first church that Mark established in Egypt was in Alexandria, the same place Philo came from, right? The same Jew capital of the world at the time. More Jews were there than anywhere. That Alexandria, Egypt, the one where had a whole lot of philosophy and etc. That Alexandria, Egypt. Yes, that one. Verse 2. And the multitude of believers, both men and women, that were collected there at the very outset and lived lives of the most philosophical and asceticism was so great that Philo thought it was worthwhile to describe their pursuits, their meetings, their entertainments, and their whole manner of life. Okay, now we can go past that now. So let's see how Eusebius described the quote unquote Christians and their actions and how they viewed scriptures during that time period, that 1st century time period, right? We're going to go down to, let's see here. I want to start at 7. Philo bears witness to facts very much like those here described, and then adds the following account. Everywhere in the world is this race found, talking about the Jews, for it was fitting that both the Greek and barbarian should share in it what is perfectly good. But the race particularly abounds in Egypt, in each of its so-called nomes, and especially about Alexandria. The best men from every quarter emigrate as if into a colony of the therapeutized fatherland, to a certain very suitable spot which lies above the Lake Maria upon a low hill, excellently situated on account of its secure and mildness of atmosphere. All right, here we go. And then a little further on, after describing the kind of houses which they had, he speaks as follows concerning their churches, which were scattered about here and there. In each house there is a sacred apartment, which is called a sanctuary and monastery, where quite alone they perform the mysteries of the religious life. They bring nothing into it, neither drink nor food, nor any of the other things which contribute to the necessities of the body, but only the laws and the inspired oracles of the prophets, and hymns and such other things as augment and make perfect their knowledge and piety. After some other matters, he says, the whole interval from morning to evening is for them a time of exercise. For they read the holy scriptures and explain the philosophy of their fathers in an allegorical manner, regarding the written words as symbols of hidden truth, which is communicated in obscure figures. This is the same thing that Emmanuel Swedenborg said about the Bible. He said the angels told him, and etc., that the Bible itself was spiritual words, spiritual revelations written down in correspondence, written down in figures. So it's up to the spirit man, the soul, to explain. When they reach that high level of frequency, it's up to them to explain and understand what the Bible itself is meant to be saying, not hyperliteral the words. Jesus walked this way. Well, that means Jesus walked that way. Jesus looked up. Well, that means Jesus looked up. He killed. Well, that means he killed. He did that. That means no. That's not what they were doing. The early Christians. I'm not talking about the Christians now who then came to the Western world and gave us their version of how we're supposed to look at the Bible. I'm talking about the early Eastern Christians. It stated that they, from morning to evening, was in scriptures, and they was explaining the scriptures in an allegorical manner. They was taking the words as symbols of hidden truth. The words themselves had a hidden truth, which is communicated in obscure figures. See, when we talk at the garden, right, what do? We try to use some of that hidden truth. You know, hey, well, but bro, you don't say that. I know it doesn't tell us. I know the Bible doesn't tell us the first Adam was a mindset, and the last Adam was a heavenly mindset. I know the Bible doesn't come out and tell you that, but it alludes to that. And if you don't get the allusion, we have Jews from Alexandria, Egypt, where we have a prestige Jew from Alexandria, Egypt, who happens to be in the same location where Mark was setting up these churches at. And according to Eusebius, he wrote about these churches. He knew about the church. So this Jew is actually telling us what the things mean, but it won't flow with modern Western Christianity. It won't flow. It won't flow. They can't. You can't fit that circle into that square or that triangle. It's not gonna flow, because when we're trying to look at it for the symbols of hidden truth, the obscure figures, when someone comes back and say it doesn't say that, it states this, and we got to stick to the text. No, they didn't stick to the text like that. This is something we learned. The Bible was a living spiritual organism that the Western world dumbed down. And we're undumbing it. We're trying to say, quit trying to take it hyper literal and learn the spiritual meaning behind it. You can clearly see that a lot of information is borrowed from other cultures. So obviously, the way those other cultures looked at the information they created might help us understand how we should look at it. So if they looked at their own information as allegorical, Why, when Moses remixed it, we won't look at it as allegorical? When Moses says it, it's literal. But the people he borrowed it from, it was allegory. It was allegory. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. When people are crossing over into the spiritual realm and they're with their soul family, they're seeing their spiritual guides, they're seeing their life reviews, they're going through all of these things. They're going to learn how they need to reincarnate and do this other so they can advance in the spiritual world. It doesn't fit with a hyper literal understanding of the Bible. It doesn't fit. People are experiencing these things and it doesn't fit with the Western presentation of the Bible. It fits with the Eastern presentation of the Bible, but it doesn't fit with the Western presentation of the Bible. So let me just keep going. It says, I'm just going to read 10 and 11 again. And after some other matters, he says, the whole interval from morning to evening is for them a time of exercise. For they read the Holy Scriptures and explain the philosophy of their fathers in an allegorical manner, regarding the written words as symbols of hidden truth, which is communicated in obscure figures. They have also writings of ancient men who were the founders of their sect, who left many monuments of the allegorical method. These they use as models and imitate their principles, imitate their literal meaning, imitate their principles, imitate their hyperliteralism, imitate their principles, imitate them saying stick to the script, stick to the word, whatever word it is, leave it stay. No, imitate their principles. Verse 12, line 12, and then I'm gonna go I'm gonna open up, see if anybody want to say anything before we go into Mark and show you what Mark did in his gospels. Show you how this Mark that they said we need you to write something, how Mark said, yeah, I'm gonna write it after I read Homer. But let me read this real fast, and then we're gonna go on to Mark. It says, these things seem to have been stated by a man who had heard them expounding their sacred writings. But it is highly probable that the works of the ancients, which he says they had, were the Gospels and the writings of the apostles, and probably some expositions of the ancient prophets, such as are contained in the epistle to the Hebrews and in many others of Paul's epistles. So what is he? You see me saying that when Philo, he didn't know nothing about the way that our group operated, but I can tell how our group operates and how I know from tradition they operated in the time past. This is who he's talking about. He's talking about us, and he's talking about our gospels and the prophets of the Hebrews. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the gospels that's full of hidden truth, full of philosophy, used to imitate principles that men were supposed to follow. He's talking about the gospels not meant to be taken hyper literal, but meant to be taken for their allegorical manner, for what it represented to the Christians, to how Paul, how James, how John, how Matthew, how Mark, how Luke, how all of those people would have received it and written it and have taught people to understand it. Yeah, I know it says it this way, but what does it mean to you? What does it mean spiritually to you? What does the Holy Spirit tell you that means? You can't make it hyper literal. All right, so now I'm gonna open it up before we go into Mark and show you what Mark did. Does anybody got anything they want to say? Am I still picking up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody at the bottom that is hanging in there. Please, I put the link up at the top of the room. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you get a chance and if you like the information that you're hearing. And with that being said, please continue, sir.
Definitely agree with it. Thank you. I mean, sorry, I definitely appreciate you too. I said agree with it. Of course, I agree with it, but I appreciate it, my brother, also. So now, so we finna find out something about Mark now. The Gospel of Mark. Okay, there's this book called the Homeric Epics and the Gospel of Mark. Once again, the Homeric Epics and the Gospel of Mark by Dennis R. MacDonald. By Dennis R. MacDonald. So now, this guy was a teacher of the Bible. He was a scholar and etc. He went around teaching the Bible to universities and etc. And in his teaching of the Bible and his studying, let's just see some of the stuff that he came across in his journey. This is going to be on page 3. It says, let me see here. Let's see, Mark to Jesus. Let me find out where I'm going to start it. Okay, right. Mark's Jesus shares much with Hector and even more with what's that? Odysseus. Odysseus. I think that's his name. Odysseus. Yeah. Odysseus and I'm just gonna say Odysseus. I might be saying his name wrong, but I'm just gonna say Odysseus. Odysseus and Jesus both sail seas with associates for their inferiors, who weaken when confronted with suffering. Both heroes return home to find it infested with murderers, rivals that devour the house of widows. Both oppose supernatural foes, visit dead heroes, and prophesy their own return in the third person. A wise woman anoints each protagonist, and both eat Last Suppers with their comrades before visiting Hades, from which both return alive. In both works, one finds God's in both works, one finds God's stilling storms and walking on water, meals for thousands at the shore, and monsters in caves. Furthermore, Mark dependence on the Odyssey suggests elegant solutions to some of the most enigmatic and disputed aspects of the gospel. Its depiction of the disciples in inept, greedy, cowardly, and treacherous, its interest in the sea, meals, and secrecy, and even its mysterious reference to the unnamed young man who fled naked at Jesus' arrest. But Mark did not steal from the epics. He transvalued them by making Jesus more virtuous and powerful than Odysseus and Hector. I'm going to leave it right there for right now. Hold on. Now, like Hector, Jesus dies at the end of the book. His corpse is rescued from his executioner, and he is mourned by 3 women. But unlike Hector, Jesus is raised from the dead. All right, so now, what Mr. Dennis is saying during his study, he was supposed to be doing a talk on Mark, but he also was supposed to be doing, I think, another talk on the Odyssey. And during that studying, he started noticing a lot of similarities from the Gospel of Mark and Homer's epic, The Odyssey. And it was so much similarity that he had to relook at it. I think he even rescheduled it. He said he rescheduled um that speech he had to do to those college students because he wanted to go in and make sure. So he rescheduled it, and when he came back, he had a new outlook on the Gospels. So now I'm going to go to Sons of Thunder, page 29 in his book, when he's going to be comparing the Homeric epics of Odyssey with the Gospel of Mark. It says Castor and Polydeuces. These are people, these are characters inside of the Odyssey. And James and John. Y'all know these are characters inside of the book of Mark. This is the comparison. Castor, I'm just going to say Odyssey in Bible. Odyssey. Sons of Tendarius. Bible. Sons of Zebedee. Odyssey. Also known as Diocuri. Lads of Zeus. James and John. I'm sorry, the Bible. Also known as, what's that? Boanerges, son of, or Boanerges, I think, Boanerges, son of thunder. Odyssey, Argonauts. Bible, fishermen. Odyssey, Castor died a violent death. Bible, James died a violent death. Odyssey, Polydeuces could have lived forever. Bible, John was thought to live until the parousia. Odyssey, Polydeuces as Zeus if he and Castor could share a single immortality. Bible, the brothers asked to sit at Jesus' right and left hand in his glory. Odyssey, Zeus consented. Bible, Jesus refused. Okay, so now let's go to page 59. We're going to go through films. What is this? Films. Let me make sure. No, sorry. This is Sleeping Sailors. Sorry. Sleeping Sailors. Now, and if now I'm sure, and if not, recheck some of this because I don't know it's Castor and which color. Some of it say Odyssey, and the other one says their names. I'm not into the Greek things. I think it's all Odysseys, but if not, it's all Homeric poems. So you can check that out for yourself. So this is Odyssey 9.563 through 64 and 10.31. Again, Odyssey 9.563 through 64 and 10.31. This is Mark 4 and 1, 36 and 38a. It says from Odyssey. So they went on board quickly and sat down upon the benches, and sitting well in order, struck the great sea with their oars. Mark, he boarded a boat and sat on the sea. Odyssey. For a month, Odysseus told Aeolus his tales while floating on an island. Mark. Jesus spoke his parables to the crowd while floating on a boat. Odyssey. But when I asked him that I might depart and requested that he send me on my way, he too denied me nothing, but gave me conveyance. Mark, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them, since he was already in the boat. Other boats were with him. Odyssey. Odysseus sailed off with 12 ships. After 10 days at sea and at night, an enticing sleep came on me. Where Odysseus slept at the stern of rugs. Mark, he himself was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. All right, Odyssey 10.47 through 49 and Mark 4:37. It says, this is Odyssey. They opened the bag, and all the winds rushed out, and swiftly the storm wind seized them and bore them weeping out to sea. Mark, a great gale of wind arose, and waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. So, and it says Mark describes the storm with Homeric nautical vocabulary. A great gale of wind arose, and waves beat the boat, so the boat was already being swamped. The New Testament uses the words "gale of the sea" only here, and its Lucian parallel, and the Septuagint relates it to the sea only twice, never in a narrative. But in the Odyssey, that word occurs 6 times, always about the sea and always in narratives. As here in Mark, this vocabulary was not typical. Sorry, this vocabulary was typical not only of Homer but of literary storms generally. So it indicates nothing conclusive concerning its origin. That's just another little tidbit. All right, so now I got two more that I want to read. We got the films, and this is a whole book full of it. I'm just skipping around because I ain't gonna read these 250 pages. Huh?
Yo, can you read the Transfiguration one?
All right, hold
Uh,
on. When I get with these done with these two, you got it on you.
yeah, I got it.
All right, I'm gonna read these two, and then he's gonna read the Transfiguration one. All right, so this is gonna be page 80 because I only did four. All right, so this is page 80. This is films fatalis or something. Films fatalis. All right, this is Odyssey and Mark 16, 17 through 29. Odyssey. Homer narrated the story as a flashback. Mark. Mark narrated the story as a flashback. Odyssey. Clytemnestra forsook her husband for her husband's cousin. Mark. Herodias forsook her husband for her husband's brother. Odyssey. Clytemnestra sought to kill Agamemnon, who posed a threat to her affair. Mark. Herodias sought to kill John, who posed a threat to her affair. Odyssey. Augustus hosted a banquet and invited the king and his soldiers. Mark. Antipas hosted a banquet and invited dignitaries, slain amid serving dishes. Mark. John was beheaded and his head was brought in on a platter. Odyssey. The feast was befouled by murder. Mark. The feast was befouled by murder. Odyssey. The murder of Agamemnon anticipates the perils Odysseus will face. Mark. The murder of John the Baptist anticipates the perils Jesus will face. All right, so and this is the last one. And this is the last one that I'm going to read, and then my brother's going to read the Transfiguration. So this is found on page 123. Page 123 is called Water Carriers. This is Odyssey 10.100 through 105 and 109 through 16. Mark 14, 13 through 16. This is Odyssey. Odysseus sent two comrades plus a herald to seek out hospitality. Mark. Jesus sent two disciples to seek out a guest room. Odyssey. They went out and met a woman drawing water to take back to the city. Mark. They went out and met a man carrying water back to the city. Odyssey. The messengers asked questions and were shown a high roofed house. Mark. The messengers asked questions and were shown an upper room. Odyssey. An ogre made ready his meal. Mark. The disciples readied the Passover. So, once again, it's a lot of comparisons in this book between the Odyssey and the Homeric epics and the Gospel of Mark, showing what Mark was doing. But go ahead, my brother. I want to hear this transfiguration.
All right, so this is on page 91, and it's speaking about the Transfiguration. That's in Mark 9, and it's saying, the author is basically saying that a lot of scholars try to say that this was prompted by Moses when he was on Mount Sinai, and Elijah when he was on um, Mount Sinai as well. because they both had a vision up there. But even though they use these antecedents, they don't really capture the other details that are found within the story. But when you read the Odyssey, it's almost exactly the same. So when you start at Mark 9:3, it says, and he was transformed before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no laundry on earth could whiten them. Well, in the Odyssey, it says, Athene touched him with her golden wand, a well washed cloak, a tunic she first of all put about his breast, where Athena is said to have given him beautiful clothing. Mark 9:5-6. Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, is it good for us to be here? Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And then this is the Odyssey. His own son gazed at him, wonderstruck, terrified too. And he spoke, Stranger, you're a new man, not what I saw before. Surely you are some god who rules the vaulting skies. Oh, be kind, and we will give you offerings, gifts of hammered gold to warm your heart. Share us, please. I beg you. Spare us, please. I beg you. So you have the same thing there. They wanna honor him, making giving him offerings and gifts. Um, Peter, they wanted to make tents for Moses and Elijah. Verses 9 and 10 of Mark 9. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen till after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves. Odyssey. Let no one hear that Odysseus is at home, neither let Laertius know it, nor the swineherd, nor any of the household, nor Penelope. Telemachus kept the secret. So he wants them to keep it. Jesus wants them to keep it a secret. In the Odyssey, this divine figure, he also wants to keep them to keep it a secret. This is verses 2-10. Now it's going to show verses 2-10 side by side. Jesus was alone with Peter, James, and John. Jesus was transformed, and his clothes became dazzling white. As such as no longer on earth could whiten them, the disciples were terrified by the transformation and offered the construct of 3 tents. A voice from heaven rebuked Peter and announced that Jesus was God's son. Jesus demanded that his disciples tell no one that what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And this is the Odyssey. If you read it straightforward, just like that. Odysseus was alone with Telemachus. Athena transformed Odysseus, and dressed him in a well-washed cloak. Telemachus was terrified by the transformation, thinking the beggar was a god, and offered gifts. Odysseus refused. He was no god, but the boy's father. Odysseus demanded that Telemachus keep his identity a secret, and Telemachus maintained the secrecy. So it's almost line for line the same storyline there, that sequence. You good, brother? If you want to go, if you want to finish up what you had.
I appreciate it. I'm trying to hold on, fam. Hold on one
You
second.
good? And just so everybody know, this is not something that would be of a shock to anybody living around that time period. Homer influenced a lot of people, a lot. Homer was basically he was like the standard of writing back then. So he influenced a lot of poetry, a lot of Greek poetry, a lot of Jewish writers, Jewish poetry. They were influenced by Homer. So this isn't any surprise that the gospel writers and they most likely intended for people to see that, you know, they were influenced by Homer. It would have resonated. with them. So that's probably why he did it. And it was even said that in education wise, this is Homer's writings were probably like the first things that were introduced in school, in the schooling. So people learning literature and stuff like that, their foundation was built on Homer. Homer had a lot of writings, influenced a lot of people. So he was most likely the standard and kind of like the encyclopedia for people back then.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, my brother. I just found out that I was recording on Facebook, but no audio has been there the whole time. So that's kind of
Hey
that's
man,
an hour and 45 minutes.
hey,
It's
at least we got
ridiculous.
it on here, man. We got the replays on, so you're still good. You know, you got a backup.
Amen. Amen. Them damn demons trying to get me.
They don't want you bringing it out.
So let's keep going on. Okay, so now as we can see that a lot of intermingling of cultures was put together and to create this spiritual work that we call the Bible. And clearly, where the Bible was gaining the influence or the foundation from, if it wasn't meant as a literal application, then the finished work of the Bible cannot be as more of a literal application. It's all about intention. It's all about principles. And this is what the ancient church knew. But we're not done yet, because I want to open up now. I'm gonna leave from the Homeric epics and the Gospel of Mark. If you have not, get the book, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna be in this book a lot. But if you have not purchased it, purchase it. And if you ain't purchased the circumcision and uncircumcision of Genesis chapter 1, Mystery of the Gardens revealed on Amazon, purchase it. But let's go to another book, right? It's called The World's 16 Crucified Saviors. Once again, the name of it is, you say something?
No, I was clapping because I'm waiting for this.
Uh, and I'm not going to get too many of them, but this is The World's 16 Crucified Saviors by Kersey Graves. Kersey Graves. Graves. Y'all know we have citations. We show citations. It shows that we're reading what they wrote from their scholarship. It's up to you to believe it or not, but we give you the citations for you to research on your own. So now, this is talking about, let's go to India. Let's go back to India. We said something about India earlier, so let's go back to India. This is page 109. It says, thus we have proof deeply, indelibly, carved in the old time chiseled rocks of India, that their Lord and Savior, Krishna, atone for the sins of a grief-stricken world by pouring out his blood as a propitiatory offering while stretched upon the cross. No wonder, in view of such historical bulwarks, Colum Wiseman, for 10 years a Christian missionary, should have exclaimed, can we be surprised that the enemies of our holy religion should seize upon this legend, the crucifixion of Krishna, as containing the original of our gospel history? Christian reader, please ponder over the facts of this chapter and let conviction have its perfect work. This is life, character, religion, the miracles of Krishna. The history of Krishna Zeus, or Jesus, as some writers spell it, is contained principally in the Bhagavad Gita, the episode portion of the Mahabharata Bible. The book is believed to be divinely inspired like all other Bibles, and the Hindus claim it in an antiquity of 6,000 years. Like Christ, he was humble, he was of humble origin, and like him, he had to encounter opposition and persecution. But he seems to have been more successful in his propagation of his doctrines, for it is declared he soon became surrounded by many earnest followers, and the people in vast multitudes followed him, crying aloud, "This is indeed the Redeemer promised to our fathers." His pathway was thickly strewn with miracles, which consisted in healing the sick, curing lepers, restoring the dumb, deaf, and the blind, raising the dead, aiding the weak, comforting the sorrow stricken, relieving the oppressed, casting out devils, and etc. So that's one. That's about Krishna. Now I want to go to page 128. We're going to read about Mithra of Persia. This is Mithra of Persia, crucified 600 BC. Mithra of Persia, crucified 600 BC. This Persian god, according to Mr. Higgins, was slain upon the cross to make atonement for mankind and to take away the sins of the world. He was reputedly born on the 25th day of December and crucified on a tree. It is a remarkable circumstance that two Christian writers, Mr. Faber and Mr. Bryant, both speak of his being slain, and yet both omit to speak of the manner in which he was put to death. And the same policy has been pursued with respect to other crucified gods of the pagans, as we have shown elsewhere. Our list is full, or we might note other cases of crucifixion. Davatot of Siam, Ixion of Rome, Apollonius of Tanyana of Cappadocia, all are reported in history as having died the death of the cross. Ixion, 400 BC, according to Nimrod, was crucified on a wheel, the rim representing the world, and the spokes constituting the cross. It is declared he bore the burden of the world, that is, the sins of the world, on his back while suspended on the cross. Hence, he was sometimes called the crucified spirit of the world. Now, I'm going to go to page 142. All right, so this is page 142. It says, we have another case of a god descended into hell in the person or spirit of the Savior Quetzalcoatl of Mexico, 300 BC. The story will be found in the Codex Borgianus, wherein is related to the account of his death and burial after crucifixion, his descent into hell, and subsequent resurrection. Of Adonis of Greece, it is declared that after his descent into hell, he rose again to life and immortality. Prometheus of Caucasus, 600 BC, likewise is represented as suffering and descending into hell, rising again from the dead and ascending to heaven. Horus of Greece is described as first reigning 1,000 years, then dying, and being buried for 3 days, at the end of which time he triumphed over Typhon, the evil principle, and rose again to life evermore. And Osiris of Egypt also is represented as making a descent into hell, and after a period of 3 days rose again. Homer and Virgil speaks of several cases of descents into Pluto's dominions. Hercules, Ulysses, and Aeneas are represented as performing the hellward journey on, as we infer, benevolent missions. Higgins remarks the gods became incarnate and descended into hell to teach humility and set an example of suffering. The story of their descent into hell was doubtless invented to find employment for them during their 3 days of hibernation or conservation in the tomb, that they might not appear to be really dead nor idle in the time, as a still proof, further proof of their matchless and unrivaled capacity and fortitude for sufferings. And the story of the 3 days entombment is likewise clearly traceable in appearance to the astronomical incident of the sons lying apparently dead and buried and motionless for 3 days at the period of the vernal epoch from the 21st to the 25th of March. All right, so I'm going to read from one more book. Tell y'all, we got citations now. This is a book called The Celestial Code of Scripture, the astral cipher underlying the miracle stories of the Bible and Quran. Once again, the celestial code of Scripture, the astral cipher underlying the miracle stories of the Bible and Quran, by John McHugh. John MCHUGH. All right, so what this guy does, he goes into the cuneiform text and etc., and he shows that a lot of the stories in the Bible, including the miracles found in the Bible, is indeed stories that was passed down from astrology. He said once you know the zodiac signs and how they work and etc., a lot of the biblical stories and the Quran stories are actually found written in the heavens, and people on earth created the stories around the heavenly tablets. So I'm just going to give you an example. This book is 397 pages. I'm just going to give one example. I'm going to go to page 149. It says, rediscovering a celestial garden in Eden and its serpents. I'm going to start a little bit at 148. During the Babylonian captivity, Jewish magicians were inculcated with Mesopotamian astrological arcana, the supreme tenet espousing to the constellations depicted divine cuneiform writing that imparted sacred knowledge through the medium of wordplay. Yet, Mesopotamian astrologers was also the society's calendar keepers, and the 686 BC star atlas, Mol Apin, unequivocally states that the heliacal rising of Aries commenced the new year. Thus, Jewish magi, such as Daniel, would have been inculcated with the spiritual import of this recurring celestial event, which included the commencement of sanctified religious events that included the reading and reenactment of the Babylonian Assyrian creation epic, Unamo Elish. Clearly, the celestial rising of Aries at the vernal equinox heralded the most solemn spiritual movement in the Babylonian Assyrian calendar, a time when the Mesopotamian creation myth was recounted and reenacted publicly. Yet, after being liberated from Babylonian enslavement, Jewish magicians would have been free to compose their own account of the creation. Intriguingly, the Anchor Bible Dictionary affirms that the Jews retained the Mesopotamian calendar after the captivity, meaning that the dawn rising of Aries would have continued as their signifier of the New Year's Day. Cuneiform stars, I know this is getting boring, but we finna get into it. Cuneiform stars, atlases, centuries older than biblical Genesis, confirms that Aries was one component of an interrelated tableau. And in the astro tableau laid the basis of the Garden of Eden myth. Cuneiform astronomical text refers to Aries as the hired worker, literally a man hired worker who stands behind his tool, the plow, apin, and the field, IQU, was assigned to till. Moreover, according to the cuneiform literature, the field constellation stood at the limits of the celestial sea known as the Apsu, Sumerian Apsu. The ruler of this astral body of water was the water god Eh. The 7th century BC astral Compendium defining A as the constellation Aquarius, the higher worker, plow, field, and EA. Aquarius was shown in figure. Y'all don't got the figure. Y'all can't see it. All right. So we're about done. Two forms of double in Tantra revealed how the field was transferred into a garden in the minds of the Hebrew Magi. To discern this pun, it is essential to know that each of the 600 cuneiform signs in the cuneiform script had a name in the same way the letter A goes by the name Eh. B goes by the name Big. C goes by the name Sig, and etc. Hence, Mesopotamia trained Jewish astrologers would have known, Mesopotamian trained Jewish astrologers would have known that the constellation was written with the Sumerian logogram that was read Iku, but whose cuneiform sign name was Gan. And Gan phonetically renders the Hebrew word Gan, garden. A second pun probably reinforced the notion that the Mesopotamian field constellation was secretly a garden. Mesopotamian scholars sometimes wrote cuneiform signs on a slant, referred to in the ancient text as tunu, incline, and the logogram for the field gan was sometimes inscribed in a slanted manner. The slanted gan, called gantanu, could be read curry, thereby providing the phonetic equivalent to the Sumerian word for garden, Kiri. Since the constellations was conceptualized as deities in heavens, I inferred that in Hebraic thought, both of these puns had inspired the notion of a pristine celestial garden. So now, if you as you keep reading through this, he goes on to show that the constellations, as the constellation continue to be in rotation, eventually the garden constellation has a serpent that enters inside of it, and eventually, uh, the serpent inside of the garden constellation. Well, the way that it's played out in the heavens. The garden comes, and then there's a serpent, and then there's a man and woman there. And as the time progresses, the man and woman get kicked out of the garden. And then they have to go through these curses and other things outside of this garden, and have to go through these trials and tribulations outside of the garden because of them being kicked out. But the point that I was getting at is that all this whole story that we know is found in Torah, it's actually written in the constellations. So not only was there a borrowing of different cultures, mythologies, there was also astronomy and astrology used in the making of the stories of the Bible also, which other cultures would have used also to come up with their mythos. It's all written in the stars, from the Hebrews to the Greeks to the Romans to the Persians, Mesopotamians, the Samaritans. It's all was written in the stars in the beginning, and that's how their mythos actually started. So, to make a long story longer, I'm kidding, to make a long story short, the Bible in itself has a lot of spiritual principles packed on top of mythological stories. Now, this is not saying the individuals of the Bible did not exist. It is saying that stories was attributed to them, or attributed to them. Stories was attributed to them to teach a deeper meaning. So an individual could do these miracles because they were enlightened. But how was they enlightened? What did the enlightenment look like? What did it preserve? What was the point of the enlightenment? That information is found in the written words and obscured figures, like Eusebius said. It's something that has to be meditated on for days at a time. Days at a time. Their exercise back in the days, their exercise was reading the Bible or reading their scriptures and coming up and finding all allegorical and and the metaphors and the idiomatic language and making it make sense. They're looking at all of these stories. They know this sounds like the Odyssey. They know this sounds like Shiva. They know this sounds like the Epic of Gilgamesh. They know these things. The point is, okay, now what? What is the source? The same source that gave the information to the people who created the Epic of Gilgamesh. The same source that gave the information to those in India. The same source that gave the information to the Grecians. The same source that gave the information to the Hebrews. The same source that when you cross over, you connect to. The same source you're supposed to connect to right now. What is that same source trying to teach us throughout all of this information? Is this most important, powerful, intelligent source trying to teach us how to be hyper literal? Or is this source trying to teach us how to get rest for our souls? Is this source trying to teach us that the labor that we have on this planet could be looked at from a different lens? Could this source be trying to tell us, as the near-death experiences have told us plenty times, that you have been here and I have been here several times to get this energy, this negative energy off of us. And the only way to get this negative energy off of us is love. And according to the gospel of the Nazarenes, according to the people who had these near-death experiences, the quickest way to not reincarnate, the quickest way to get with the source and stay with the source is to follow the teachings of Christ, which according to Eusebius is not meant to be taken hyper literal, but understood for their deeper meanings. So the Bible, it says, yes, we've been struggling with this lesson for over a year. And people got to understand, as y'all been knowing me for the year of me teaching this Bible, I have always had this understanding in the back of my head for over a year, which is these things ain't meant to be taken literal. Why am I calculating? Why am I trying to find the history? Why am I doing all of this stuff? People are telling us. They're crossing over. They're telling us. None of it matters. That don't matter. That's not what the Bible's trying to do. It's trying to get you on a good path with God. This is why the Messiah himself can look at the Torah and the Tanakh and say, it's all about loving the Father and loving your neighbor. This is why the Messiah can say, love one another, bear one another's burdens. This is why James and all of them can talk about this royal law of love for your neighbor. I know we get wrapped up in the judgment and then, hey, Cyrus, it said Cyrus here, and they found Cyrus he really existed in history. And this happened and that really happened in history. But that wasn't the point. What is the spirit trying to get you to what is the spirit trying to reveal? Why was the Holy Spirit given to people who understood and could read hyper literally? Why would I need the Holy Spirit to teach me all things Christ stated if I can read the words and make them be hyper literal? That's all I'm getting at. A lot of the cultures and customs in the Bible, they have pagan roots, and it's okay. See, a lot of people, a lot of these scholars, they find this information, they walk away from the Bible. They walk away. That's what happened to a lot of these people. The guy, Gnostic Informant, who I found out a little bit about these books because they are trying to debunk. They're trying to show the difference understanding of the Bible and showing, hey, it's all a scam, it's all this, this, and that. But I'm using the information differently because they don't understand what the Bible is trying to accomplish. You can go in there and find many contradictions. You can go in there and find many pagan roots. You can go in there and find all of that stuff. But guess what? When the people crossed over and they give their interpretation, when they give what happened to them in their interview and etc., they say, I was showed in my life review all of the harm that I did to other people. And I was able to feel how I made them feel. But I was also showed how much love I gave to other people. And I was able to feel what they felt like. It was no judgment. It was no condemnation. And then you go to Christ, and you go to Christ's word, and Christ says all about love. And then you go into the new covenant promise. New covenant promise. I will no longer remember their sins no more. If you're going to be born of God, you can no longer sin. Then you got these people crossing over saying, hey, all the bad things I did, I judge myself. But the Lord he said there was no condemnation. There was no judgment over there. Only thing they did, they gave me another chance to come back and correct what I didn't correct in that lifetime. No judgment, no lake of fire, none of that stuff. All of those biblical concepts to teach spiritual lessons, not to be taken hyper literal. Thank you guys for listening in. This is Elvin Israel from the Garden Ministries. If you have not, please check out our book on Amazon, The Circumcision and Uncircumcision of Genesis chapter 1, Mystery of the Gardens Revealed. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channels. We have my mentor, All Things Fulfilled by Mr. William Bell. We also have our ministry channel, which is Garden Ministries, which we deal with the psych, as well as these near-death experiences, etc. And then my brother Mike, he got his own channel, SF Wisdom. Check out SF Wisdom, Snake Fighting Wisdom. My personal YouTube channel, AOSD CHANDLER. AOSD CHANDLER, stands for Assembly of Sound Doctrine Chandler. Go to our university page, RPK, that's Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. RPK, that's Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. When we look at those three tenets to understand more of what the Bible or meant to the individuals that was creating it at the time, and how we can make it use it in our lives today. If you also on TikTok, check out our brother Batson Better Life, BATSON BETTERLIFE, and Batson Better Life RPK. I think I did all of the shout outs and etc. If y'all don't mind, could y'all give a shout out to everybody in the room? And if anybody wanted to add anything, this is the time. Thank y'all for listening in. I don't think no one called me a heretic. We did all the citations. God bless y'all and thank y'all.
Amazing, man. And you know what I like about the information that was brought out, and 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 how we can accept it for what it is, and it not hinder our faith. In fact, I feel like it causes us to unite more as a people in general, when we can look at these other religions and cultures and see how we're kind of all speaking about similar things, and we're kind of on the same page on a lot of beliefs. This kind of unites us and kind of brings us together more in harmony when we can pull different sources of wisdom from different places and and kind of uh show the similarities between the two. So I think that's great, man. I think information like this is great, and it all depends on your perception and how you're gonna internalize it. But for me, I think it's awesome, and um, I think this will bring people together more once we learn how to perceive it. But I want to shout out Apple. Appreciate you, Lloyd. Appreciate you, Mr. Bell. Appreciate you, uh, Latoya, Leroy, Marquette, Christ Saves. I see you. David Franklin, I see you. Always blessed. I see you. Thank you. I appreciate everyone for listening in, and I hope that the information that was brought out was edifying, and I hope maybe this helps on your perspective when reading scripture, um, that we can gain more of the teachings, the deeper meanings behind what's being said, opposed to is this historically accurate? Is this, can we pinpoint this to the exact date of when this happened? How can we prove that this actually happened, instead of just taking the lesson that's being taught? I think we get caught up with all this other stuff that the people who are writing had no intention for us to do. They probably just wanted us to gain something from the lesson that's being taught within the story, and that's what we should be focused on. That's what's going to help us grow within our spirit. That's what's going to help us grow within our mind. Build our character to be more godly. Those are the things that's going to matter, not whether or not if we could prove this is historically accurate or not. That does nothing for our spiritual growth. We want to be more Christ-like. We want to have a more heavenly mindset. That's what matters. That's what's going to help change the world. Love is going to help change the world. And if we can learn to love each other better, man, we can work together and we can make this a better place. Because that's the ultimate goal in my eyes. And a lot of these NDEs, they're saying things are gonna start changing around here, man. And I feel it too. I've been feeling it for even before I started actually even looking into the NDEs. We see all this madness around us, and sure, it looks bad, but hey, that's a part of growth. It even says in the Bible we need tribulation in order to persevere, in order to gain these godly qualities. We need to go through these pains. It's all a part of growth. And I think the world is going through this growth. So sure, things around us look bad in our immediate, things look like it's not going in the right direction, but it's all necessary. And I see good things ahead of us. I see the world changing, and I believe that. So if anybody else got anything to add, please do. If you want to come up on stage, just raise your hand. Anybody else on stage got anything to add? If not, I could pray us out.
I would love to hear someone that's in the audience's perspective or thought process, or how you view the information that has just been brought out.
Hey, if everybody's silent, y'all gonna pray us out. It's a lot to take in. I know. I mean, y'all. This is. I know it's a lot to take in. I know it. But we've been on this for about a year now, and we finally got it down. So we've been wanting to bring this out, but there's a time and place for everything. So we finally reached the time and place.
Right. Yeah. And this information, like Elvin said, we've been going over information like this for over a year, and it's kind of it's a lot to just process, and giving it, hitting you with it in an hour, 2 hour lesson it was, and that's a lot of information to kind of internalize. But we're gonna be, I'm pretty sure now, since we've broken the ice, this is gonna be brought out more and more. It's definitely gonna be brought out in our book in more depth, that we're working on, and I'm pretty sure there's gonna be more lessons to come, showing some more unique details. And the more that we gain understanding of the intention of the writers of the Bible, then I think the more accepting will be of the information that was given. But I know a lot of, you know, a lot. I know the regular Christian out there who's heard it a certain way. That that standard model that's given over here in America probably won't be as open minded to it. But it's definitely some information that's needed to be heard, man. So I don't see nobody in the audience, man, that wanna come up.
Yeah, y'all can pray us out then.
All right, I pray us out. I just want to say, Alvin, man, thank you for compiling all this information, man. The Lord has really opened your mind and your eyes up to a lot of great, great, great knowledge. Um, let me hold on. Sorry, something came up on my phone. I pray us out. All right, Father, thank you once again, man. Uh, God of the universe, thank you once again, the Most High God. I appreciate you for bringing us together to break bread and to continue to delve deeper into your word and find out more things about you and more things about the heavenlies. And it's always a great reminder, just taking in that deep breath. Every breath should be a reminder of God's grace and mercy and goodness. Um, we were created for a purpose, and it's just great to commune with my brothers and sisters. And I'm just forever thankful, Lord. And I see great things in our future. And I want to thank you ahead of time for bringing us where we're at and bringing us where we're going. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So y'all know, I'm gonna give about 30 seconds. Anybody saying nothing, close it up.